So, Connor's back this week, sitting across the desk from me.
Yep.
While I'm looking at this very awesome book that his mom gave me. It's called The Atlas of Indian Nations. And I could just sit here and read it to y'all. No, it's actually very cool. Particularly because I don't know a lot about like the Apache and the Navajo. Most of what I know is all of the tribes around where I grew up in New York and the Iroquois Nation in northern New York, and then the Plains Indians. I don't really know much about anything else other than, and I gotta go look it up, but James Cook, who had Agate Springs Ranch, before he came to Agate, I believe he was in the military or he was just hired, but he was fighting some of the tribes in Southwest America.
Oh, okay.
You know, when we get to that story, we'll talk about it. But this is very cool.
Yeah, and I'm the same way. I really only know about the Lakota nations that I grew up around here in Nebraska. It's, of course, almost strictly Lakota. There's some Cheyenne, too, of course.
Yeah.
And some other ones, but it's mostly Lakota, the Lakota, Dakota, Oglala nations. So,
and I know a teensy bit about Omaha Indians, just because I know a gal here that is Omaha, and she came out here, and I did a story with her one time for the paper. It was actually kind of interesting because the paper was doing this magazine on ethnic heritage in western Nebraska. And I was like, nobody's doing Native Americans. I got this one. So I talked to a Lakota friend of mine. Really, really interesting story. And the one takeaway I have from that story is her mother always told her, in order to be seen as equal to the white man, you have to be 3 times as good. And that just kind of hit me because I heard similar comments from my black friends growing up in New York.
Yep. I could believe it. There's just so much that the quote unquote white man has done to this the United States, and it's incredible. Not just to cultures, but to the land, to and everything.
But the Omaha lady that I interviewed, she was telling me about she had these plans and these designs to make things for her family members out of feathers from a bald eagle. And she asked me if I had ever seen a bald eagle, and I go, I've seen plenty. The only one up close is Lincoln at Riverside Discovery Center, and she got really, really sad. And I go, why are you sad? And she goes, well, because he should be free. And I go, do you know the story of how Lincoln came to the zoo? And she goes, no. I go, he was severely injured and he can't fly anymore. And if you ever go and you look at him stretch his wings out on the left side, you can see you can see the damage. And essentially he'd be dead if they put him back in the wild.
Did Lincoln come from Lake McConaughey?
I can't remember where he came from.
Because there's a large bald eagle reserve in Lake McConaughey.
Yeah.
For our viewers, if you're a big lover of bald eagles, go to Lake McConaughey in Nebraska. It's beautiful. Yeah. And there's so many of them.
Yep. So that kind of made her feel a little better, because I was like, he'd literally be dead if he was in the wild. He couldn't defend himself. He can't fly. He can't hunt. So that made her feel a little better. And then she goes, have you ever held one? And I go, no. And she goes, I got one. And I'm like, wow. What? So she explained how difficult it is even for Native Americans to get a bald eagle. And she had to fill out all this paperwork and what she was going to do with it and everything. She goes out to her deep freeze and comes back and puts it on my lap. And I'm like, what?
Here you go.
It weighed a lot more than I would have thought. And I mean...
So wait, back up. She went to her deep freeze. This wasn't a frozen bald eagle.
Yes. It wasn't
a live bald eagle?
No.
This is a frozen
It was frozen, yeah.
I was a little confused. I thought it was a live bald eagle to just put on your lap.
Oh, that would have been awesome.
I was a little...
But
So she gets dead bald eagles?
Or
to harvest
she thinks this might even be the only one she'll ever be able to get, because she had to jump through so many hoops to get it and explain what she was going to use it for, what rituals, what each bit would mean she was, making. And she showed me her government papers that she had from it. And this bald eagle happened to die from natural causes. And she had just gotten it recently and hadn't started making the outfits that she was going to make for her family members. I was not expecting. I went to do a story on Omaha Indians, and she had a couple of special dishes that her family made growing up with them being poor on the reservation. Yeah. I was not expecting that interview to go down the road of, here's a bald eagle on your lap, it's dead and frozen.
A dead bald, yeah. And for our viewers who don't know, or maybe maybe we'll get some outside of the nation, U.S. viewers. It is illegal in the U.S. to hunt, harvest, poach, catch, or have bald eagles. So.
Even if I'm out, let's say at Lake McConaughey, taking pictures of bald eagles,
and a dead one was on the road,
I gotta leave it. Yep. You can't even pick up the feathers.
Nope. And there are many. I have to admit, when I was a kid, I did because up in Lake McConaughey, there's feathers all over the place, and I did. I picked up. I wasn't supposed to, folks. That was a no.
Yeah, and I think that rule is all there because they don't want you going and just yanking them off a bird that's alive and stuff. But I also get why you shouldn't take them, and I get little kids do it. I wouldn't do it today, but 10-year-old me would definitely pick up a bald eagle feather.
Well, isn't it kind of interesting to think if Benjamin Franklin really did get his wish about the turkey, and that the bald eagle never would have been our national bird, would have been so protected? Because I don't know, gold eagles, which are also very prevalent in this place, they do have protective status, but not nearly to the extent of the bald eagle.
No, they almost went extinct.
But so did the golden eagle.
Okay.
I think they all kind of threatened extinction at one point in time because of overhunting. So I think it was just because it's the national bird.
I mean, I had a lot of fun doing both of those stories, but they didn't go the way that I had planned it to go. The other story pretty much did. It just kind of hits me from time to time because, I don't have to live in that world where I have to be better than somebody else just to be seen as an equal. Sometimes I do, quite frankly, depending on the man that I'm around, I have to be better than them to be seen as an equal, but it's not a thing I have to experience to the extent that my black friends and my Native American friends have experienced.
No, at least not here in the United States.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be so sure if it was like that throughout the world, but in the United States, definitely, we have the advantage.
Yeah.
And it's a sad thing.
So we're actually working on lucky number 13 episode right now.
Woohoo!
Yay!
I didn't even know we were up to 13.
Yeah. We kind of zipped through pretty quickly.
This is going to be a rather unlucky episode.
13 is my lucky number. When I played baseball, that was my number. I had like a 1.97 ERA and hit over 400, but I mean, it's little league, so if you're decent, you're going to be hitting over 400. But I was a fairly decent pitcher, and I wore 13 every year. I've never had bad luck with it. I don't know. I just don't kind of believe in that kind of stuff. But who knows? Maybe it'll be lucky 13, and someone will give us $1 million after listening to this episode.
Do we have a 13th Avenue here in Scottsbluff? I know in a lot of small towns that was a big taboo to have a 13th Avenue or a 13th Street.
Yeah.
We might have a 13th Street, but not a 13th Avenue. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I've never paid attention because where I grew up, everything was location-based.
Well, and our avenues are lettered, I suppose.
Yeah.
Well, no, up to my street. No, it's numbered. So I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, where I grew up, it was just you build a road wherever you need it. We didn't have any grid patterns, and
we're pretty lucky out here.
And even when I worked at the paper, like our media editor would tell me, Irene, there's a accident on the corner of 27th and Avenue B, and I'm standing there going 27th, okay. Avenue B, where's Avenue B? And she would just go, it's by Walgreens. All right, I know where I'm going. And so she got used to that after time. Instead of just giving me a street address, she would tell me something that was relatively close to where it was. And that's just the way that I grew up learning directions.
Well, as a past FedEx driver, I think the most annoying thing wasn't the city; it's the countries out here. Not just out here, but out in Minnesota. The county roads and the county numbers, because they're 5 to 7 digits long, and there's tiny, tiny little blue sign that you can barely see. That's just kind of out by the road, just kind of out there, and depending on the weather. You can really go around these county roads trying to find the right house. And of course, you just look. I must think that some of these farmers, like, what a complete idiot, just looking at that FedEx driver going around in circles.
They're like, city boy.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, what? This guy.
That reminds me of the story that I had done a story several years ago on some ladies in Minnetonka, and they were working on doing a complete history of the little town of Minnetonka. And I had gone down to the Legacy of the Plains Museum for something else, and I was done and just kind of chit-chatting with the director, and she's like, hey, do you know what these ladies are doing? I'm like, well, I know who that lady is, and I've seen that lady before, but I don't know what they're doing. So she told me, and I just went over and started talking to them, and they're like, yeah, you need to come back and we can do more on this. So I do a story on it. It appears in the paper. And some guy, I don't remember, I want to say he lived in Illinois, but he literally wrote a letter to them. He grew up in Minnetonka, and so he wanted to give them some information. And he literally just wrote it to those ladies, Minnetonka, Nebraska, no address whatsoever, and they got the letter. And only one of the 5 ladies lived in Minnetonka at that point in time. And I was like, yep, that's small town America. Yep, you betcha. And they ended up putting that whole deal into the book they did on the history of Minnetonka. It's on my bookcase out in the other room.
Yeah, we haven't really touched on Minnetonka too much.
Yeah, and I'm a little nervous about that because I know at least 3 of the 5 ladies are still alive. I think 4 out of the 5 are alive. One I know for sure passed away a couple years ago. The one lady, she used to be a kindergarten teacher at Lake Minnetonka School, and I'm like, man, I don't want to get phone calls from her if I screw something up. But the book is fascinating, and we need to go through it at some point in time because it's a neat little town. It was bigger than what it is at one point in time. What is it? I mean, it's like, 7-8 streets long?
Yeah, it's about.
It's not that big at all.
It's not big, but even when my mom was the chief of police down there, they still had really cool parades in the summer. Mm-hmm. They had Santa come in the winter. It really was a pretty lively community. And then it's just over the years, people get older, and it's hard to stay because there's nothing to do in Minnetonka. Literally, yeah. There's no jobs. The bar closed down years ago. Yeah. I think they have one restaurant left. In the, is it 15 years? We're going on 15 years that I've been here. That bar that is a restaurant as well. It's been several. The old VFW or the old Union?
I don't even know. It was some steakhouse when I moved here.
Oh, that's probably the Ranchero.
Okay.
The old Ranchero probably hasn't been open since you've been around, has it? Has it always been closed? Because it closed years ago.
It was closed, then opened, then closed, then opened, then closed, and I haven't heard of it opening again.
Yeah.
And I've never been down to eat there either.
It was pretty good when I was a kid.
Okay.
I remember. When I was a kid, it was still opened. The old owners were still running it. They always had lots of problems there, though. But they also had an old grocery store that was open. The old bank. I don't know if the old bank's still there or not. I thought maybe they finally pulled out too. I'm not sure. They might still have the bank down there. The post office is still down there.
Post office is still there, yeah. Because the lady I was just talking to you about, her daughter was in the Air Force for 25 years, retired lieutenant colonel. I don't think she was a full colonel. Her dad, her mom's husband, he passed away a couple years ago, and I didn't know their address, and they're in rural Minnetonka. So I literally just went down there with their names on the envelope like that guy did, and I went into the post office, and the lady that was working there said she didn't know who they were, and she goes, well, hang on a second, because so-and-so's been here forever. And it was an older lady, and she walked over and she goes, oh yeah, I know who they are. I'll make sure this gets to them. I'm like, okay. And it did, because I got a very nice thank you card afterwards. But I mean, they were very nice and generous to me over the years, and said yes to every story I asked them to do. I didn't expect a thank you card, but I wanted to express my sympathy when her husband passed away. And, I mean, I had fun going out there, spending the day with her. I did a profile on her and how she managed to be able to keep horses the entire time she was in the military. When she was stationed in Iraq, she got to see Saddam's horses. She got to strike up conversations, and that was kind of her way in with a variety of, at least Iraqis. I'm trying to remember if she was in Afghanistan. I can't remember now. But that was her way in with the locals, was they had this common love of horses, and they could sit down and talk about it. And I'm just like, that's absolutely fascinating. Do a story with me. And she was like, okay.
Yeah.
And then she told me a few things too that can't ever go in the paper. I've had that happen so many times. I would interview people, and I'm sitting there thinking, wow, that's the best way to start this story. And then they're like, you can't put that in the paper. I'm like, why did you tell me the story? I interviewed one of the law enforcement rangers at the Scottsbluff National Monument, and he tells me this fantastic story. 35 minutes, he tells me this story. And I'm going, that's my lead. That's how we're going to start this story. And when he's done, he goes, you can't put that in the paper, Irene. I'm like, what? Why did you just spend a half an hour telling me this?
Is it because it's like classified or inappropriate or sensitive topic? Sensitive
topic. Okay. There you go. Yeah. But he gave me enough information. He and I get along really well. We keep in touch still. And I was there for 5 hours talking to him, and it was all just an interview for the paper. And then I get back to the paper, and I'm going, I have 5 hours of information, and I'm only supposed to write a 1,500-word story. I managed to get it done, but I did have to leave quite a bit out. And then it actually made it kind of easier when I got to things when I was like, should I put this in? And then I'm like, you know what? If I'm questioning it, no, don't put it in.
Yeah.
And so I talked to him last week, and I talked to the superintendent at the monument. And one of my goals in life is I want to walk all the way around the monument, and I have permission to do that.
Like all the way around the base, or all the way around the top?
All the way around the base.
That'd be kind of hard, wouldn't it? I guess not.
The superintendent he's like 6 feet tall, your build. He said it took him a little over 4 hours, so I'm guessing 7 for me, because I'm going to take my camera and stop every 10 seconds and take pictures.
Well, I can imagine once you get like towards the north side, it gets...
Yeah, he said when he came around onto the west side, the terrain is such that you have to do a little bit of switchbacking to do that. So he told me I can do it, but I'm not going to do it now because the snakes are out. I'm going to wait till like October. Before I go, and hopefully before it snows. And, even if it snows, I'll just put my waterproof boots on and go. And all I got to do is just, he just said, text me beforehand. So when people start calling about a crazy person out there, he knows who it is. It was nice to get back in touch with him. I haven't seen him in several months, but life kind of keeps you sometimes from getting out and doing the things you want to do.
Oh, yeah.
Last Tuesday, I went to the zoo, took a crap load of pictures and gave them to them. And it's kind of funny because I'm always saying to them, thank you so much for letting me do this. And they're like, no, thank you for the pictures. Because if you hire a professional photographer to go and take the pictures that they need, the zoo can't afford that.
No.
And I can get the same pictures for nothing. And
something we should take the time to do actually also is to make sure people know about our wonderful little zoo that's been around here forever, and just how cool it is for a little town like this to have a zoo.
Yeah.
You don't see that hardly anywhere. And this isn't by any means a rinky-dinky, circus zoo.
It's
a
AZA,
good-sized zoo.
And it's AZA accredited. They're actually going through their accreditation process again right now. I'm trying to remember the name of the organization. They had 5 chimps. They weren't doing, when you hear of chimps being tested, you think of the horrible crap from the 70s. And these guys were the human behavioral ones.
Yeah, the ones where they test, what would you do in certain scenarios?
Yeah.
Press buttons.
Yeah.
You get a treat. Kind of thing.
Or if you do this one thing, I'll give you 2 treats. Or if you do this other thing, you get 1 treat. And if you get the 2 treats, are you going to give one to your buddy chimpanzee?
Yeah.
Those kind of tests. And the organization was getting out of doing that. And they didn't want to split the troop up because the troop had been together pretty much their whole life. So we have all 5 of them.
Yeah.
And they redid the whole indoor enclosure to make it safer for the chimps and for humans. And they're just fascinating. I can just go there and watch them all day.
Oh, absolutely.
I love all the animals that are there. They're working on getting some new ones again. They told me some things the other day that I can't say, but they are working on getting some new ones. And it's mainly because if I said, oh, they're going to get another Connor at the zoo, and then something falls through. So you don't want to say until they're actually there. And then also when they come here, they're required to go through a quarantine process. So you want to make sure everything is okay before you say, oh, hey.
Yeah, and I know sickness kind of ravaged. I think we lost almost all our cats.
Yeah, so the zoo has a program. I want to say it's at least 30 years old. Local hunters will go out and hunt the Canada geese, and most of them will dress the Canada geese. One of the ladies I know at the zoo, she learned how to dress geese because they didn't used to do it. And that's a lot of how they feed the larger cats over the winter is by these donations. And I remember being there one time to do a story, and this pickup truck came up. It was literally full with Canada geese. And they were like, we don't know how to dress them. And they were like, that's all right, we can do it. And they took them down back, and it was good to go.
For our viewers, dressing is butchering, not putting them in skirts, fancy hats, and giving them to our animals. Not literally dressing them up.
So, see, sometimes I forget, I need to give an explanation of what that is.
You never know. I can see something like dressing geese. What are you doing?
What are you doing to those poor things? So for those of you who are unaware, bird flu is a pandemic right now. And unfortunately, some of the birds they had bird flu, and it passed to the larger animals, and that's how they passed away. And it's really sad, but you also don't think about that. You've had this program for at least 30 years. And there's never been an issue with it. And I don't think a lot of people even know how bad the bird flu epidemic is. I mean, it's literally worldwide. It is a pandemic. I don't know if they'll ever go back to that program ever again, but they'll probably be looking for some big-time donations come wintertime because that meat really helped them out a lot.
Well, I know up in South Dakota, in bear country, they get a lot of horses, old horses. I know people probably don't want to hear that. Don't hop on me, bear country. I'm not trying to make you out to be cruel or nothing. It's just how it is. These are old horses. They're usually die of old age or whatever. They get used for meat. They get fed to the bears.
Yeah.
And that was one of my cousin's job was to butcher up old horses, feed them to the bears. I mean, it's just not the pleasant job, but I mean, you got to do it. And it's same with the tigers. You got to feed them. It's remarkable how much these big cats will eat in a day. And I know many people are fans of that Tiger King. They kind of explain that just how hard it is to feed a tiger. So.
And when I was at the zoo the other day, Bonnie the bobcat's probably my favorite animal there right now. Well, she has been for a long time. And the story behind Bonnie is her mom abandoned her because she had pneumonia. And so someone found her. There's this sanctuary back on the eastern part of the state that rehabilitates wild animals and puts them back in the wild. Mm-hmm. Well, Bonnie took like 9 months to get over her pneumonia. And by then she had imprinted on humans. So they were like, we can't put her back in the wild. She's not going to live. So they asked the zoo if they would take her and take care of her. So that's how she came to the zoo. And when I was there last Tuesday, they always have an enrichment day. I believe they have one more than one day a week. But enrichment for the animals, you have some kind of exercise to keep their wild instincts stimulated, and so that they can learn and hunt and that kind of stuff. So you can keep as much of their natural instincts going as possible. So they put way up on the top of her enclosure a box, and it had a mouse in it. It took her a little bit to figure out the best way to get there, but once she got it, yeah, she devoured that little mouse. And that was her. I mean, she's going to eat the mice anyway. That's part of her diet, but let's make it harder for her so she can learn how to hunt it. She can smell it. She knows it's there. And then they hid it in a box, and they put it up in an area where she had to think about, how am I going to get it? Yeah. And so that keeps them stimulated and able to live as naturally as you can. I know a lot of people hate zoos, but there's a lot of animals that wouldn't be alive. And if you're okay with a bald eagle just getting torn apart by something else because it can't defend yourself, I'm not. I'd rather he live his life, and he spreads his wings and he hops around and flits around in his he's got a decent size enclosure, but he will never be able to fly again. And they do the same thing there. I've watched him go after mice as well. And for the record, the mice are all frozen when they get them. I'm not sure. I would have to go ask them. I'm assuming they thaw them out, but they're not live mice, basically.
They're dead mice.
I also have gotten to play with the cockroaches there. They're Madagascar hissing cockroaches. They're really big. If I saw one in my house, I'd be freaking out. But I went and saw, it was like a 50-gallon fish tank.
Just full
of Madagascar hissing cockroaches.
Yep, I remember those.
And I didn't mind it walking on me. It just felt like a heavier fly. So when you can feel a fly walking on you?
Oh, yeah.
It felt like that, but a little heavier of a step. But I was also not sticking my hand in that tank. And the education curator at the time, she's like, do you want to hold one? I'm like, yeah. She goes, sticks her hand in there and pulls one out. I'm like, okay, I'm not doing that. I'll take the one you pulled out.
Well, and out here in the Midwest, we really don't have cockroaches, at least not like I hear you guys do even in New York. Like, you guys are notorious over there for them. I mean, we have them. Don't get me wrong. We have them, but they're incredibly small. They're almost like little beetles. You barely really notice them, honestly.
Yeah, I'm good without them. I don't think I would freak out if I saw one. I would just be like, well, we got to call the exterminator. If I saw one Madagascar hissing cockroach in my house, I'd be freaking out because I'm going, I know there's hundreds more somewhere. That would kind of freak me out a little bit. So, we'll do a story on the zoo too. Maybe I'll get the new director to come over, or we can go and learn how to use our little field stuff that we got. And do an interview there. I'm sure she would come and chat with us about the zoo. I charged up our things, but I haven't looked at how to use them yet. So we would like to do some outside stuff with our podcast for y'all. And there are some things where we're going to have to travel to do the stories. Mm-hmm. So we got these little square boxes with some microphones. I can't even remember their name right now.
They're just like your little travel mics that a typical news reporter would have.
Yeah. And so we plan on going out some places this summer to do some stories. We haven't planned out exactly where yet. And I have a feeling that you're just going to come one day and be like, hey, let's go here. All right. And
it's getting
go.
nicer.
Yeah. I know Dan, the superintendent at the monument, will come and talk about the monument. Justin is a law enforcement officer there. We can go and talk to Justin. He may even come here and talk to us. Justin knows a lot about the history of this area. I'll just see him in passing when I'm at the monument. He'll be like, hey, how you doing? And then all of a sudden it's an hour later.
Yeah.
And literally all we're talking about is Mitchell Pass, or when they were extending the visitor center that they just opened last year before. Because when it opened, it was in the middle of COVID, so it was done and ready to be open, but COVID, so they can't.
The one at the Scottsbluff Monument, or the one at the Wildcats?
At the monument.
At the monument.
Yeah. I mean, that's a story in itself, but he would often tell me when I would just see him in passing, oh yeah, we found this, blah, 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 and get stories that way. And he's just a wealth of information for that kind of stuff. So there's lots of people that I think are going to be willing to talk to us, and a lot of them know me from the paper, and I've never had anybody tell me no. Just be like, hey, come over and chat. My friend Sandra moved to this area because she did research on the Japanese in the Panhandle. And when she comes over to talk, I'm just going to let her talk. And then you and I can ask questions because she knows it. No amount of research I could do is going to be better than what she already knows. She's pretty close to an expert on it. And then my friend Vicky, her family used to own the Eagle Cafe in downtown Scottsbluff, and I want to get her to come and just talk about her family, so we can get the history and the interesting stories from Sandra, and then Vicky could talk about her families. And I am almost positive both of them will say yes. So what else are you wanting to do with the podcast?
Oh, there's just so much. We definitely need to cover, like I said, the infamous Terry Carpenter.
Yeah. I'm letting you go ahead with that one.
That one's going to be interesting.
Yeah.
He's an interesting character, but he really is more or less why this town is this town, for better or for worse. Mm-hmm. So...
yeah, we could probably just set up shop at Legacy of the Plains and just be like, just pull your archives out,
Yeah.
I have a question for you, Connor. I know back in December I told you that I had wanted to start a podcast and that I wanted to do it on the history of this area. I just find everything about it fascinating, from, before people lived here, when it was just animals, when it was under the sea, to today. I mean, everything. And I've already got part of a story done on the first marriage in Scottsbluff. I actually know someone who is a direct descendant of that couple.
Oh, nice.
And I want to go down to Legacy and see if I can't find the announcement in the paper. I know they have some stuff in their archives as well, but I've got quite a bit of information from their direct descendant. But I remember when I told you about that, we were both working at the same job together, and I wasn't sure you were serious when you said, let's do it.
I'm not sure I was either. I'm not sure I was either.
What convinced you to do it?
I think it was good. I can't really tell you. I think it was a good idea. I think it was good just to be pushed. We brought it up several times, just the idea of it. It wasn't like, let's just do it. It did take me to some convincing, because I am thoroughly convinced to this day I'm no good at this whatsoever. People like listening to this hideous, awful voice of mine, more power to it. I'm no Walter Cronkite.
I hate the sound of my voice, and people keep telling me, oh, you have a great voice for that. And I'm like, that actually a compliment or not? I don't know. And then I do all the editing, so I have to hear my voice over and over and over.
Yeah. Well, and I grew up with a lot of a lot of people, a lot of famous news reporters are from Nebraska. Johnny Carson's from Nebraska. Mm-hmm. There's just famous personalities that you hear these voices like, oh man, I want to sound like that. I sound nothing like that.
And I don't know if it really matters,
I don't know if it matters. I mean, I don't know if it matters.
Yeah.
At all.
I typically don't mind people's voices. I've noticed when I'm editing, I say and a lot. And then this happened. And I'm going, seriously, I said it again? I can't tell you how many of those I cut out of every episode, probably 15 or 20 of them. But it's my brain's way of thinking what the next thing is that's coming. And I can just cut it out, and y'all never know that I cut it out, and it sounds perfectly fine. There is a podcast that I listen to, and I don't want to name the person, but there is one main person that does the podcast, and then rotating people, because this particular podcast is part of one of those podcast groups.
Oh, okay.
So the folks from, podcast B, C, and D will come to podcast A and talk, and it's just whoever has the expertise on that. And one of the folks that comes, I was trying to listen to an older episode on a topic that I was very, very interested in. Every other word. And then, and I got about 5 minutes in, and I go, I can't deal with this. So I deleted it, and every time that person is a guest on that podcast, I try, and I just can't. And it sucks because they're always interesting topics. So I'm very well aware that I say and a lot, and I'm cutting that shit out. Yeah. And a lot of times too, when I'm reading something, my brain, because we'll write the script out, and when I'm reading it, I'll go, oh, I need to mention such and such. Wait, no, I mentioned that later. Should I mention it now and then skip it later? And that goes through my brain in about 2 milliseconds. And what comes out of my mouth is, and? And this... So I just delete that stuff out. See? And last week, I even did it a few times. I had fewer last week because I was just sitting here talking to myself. So it was just more of a stream of consciousness, whatever.
Stream of consciousness something.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember it was like around Thanksgiving, I think. Mm-hmm. When I first mentioned it to you, and then you finally said yes, and I think it was the first week in January, I bought all the equipment.
And then I was like, oh, you're serious. Because I thought I was just agreeing to agree so we can get on with it, but no, you're serious.
So I forced you to do this.
No, you didn't force. It's just more as you're serious. I didn't think you were... And until it happens, I take everything with a grain of salt.
Okay. And when it all arrived, my husband goes, what if Connor drops out? I go, well, then I guess I'm doing it by myself. And then I was all stupid with the mics, and I had the boom mics up, and I'm going, why do we have boom mics up? We keep knocking them over. Our very first recording, do you remember that? You like uncrossed your legs down, and... Yeah.
Stupid mics.
I still have that. We'll have to do a blooper thing one day. Like, how you make the cord make noise. That's how you always know Connor is moving.
Yep, that's me. This cord keeps falling off the table.
Yeah, we kind of got to figure out something better. I mean, it works for the most part. And last week when I was doing it by myself, I had to unplug your mic. I turned everything on and hit record, and then I saw both things moving.
You get the double effect.
And I'm going, yeah, I don't need that. So and after I unplugged it, I'm like, oh, I bought this expensive piece of equipment that literally has an off button for your mic.
And the equipment is pretty fancy. I have to say, this isn't like it's nothing like I would have thought we would start with. I would think we would just start with those little tiny mics that you get when you buy a computer. It's just like a little tiny wire.
The little pencil-sized ones.
Pencil-sized mics. I thought we were just gonna, kind of try our best to talk into that. And
I literally went online, did a search for the best podcast equipment. When you said yes, and I thought you were serious.
I thought you were serious. I was serious. I just didn't know you were serious.
I spent, so I do 10-hour shifts overnight, and I spent my 3 shifts in a row doing searches, watching videos, reading up on stuff. And
she does work, just so our viewers know, she does do her job, actually. It wasn't just like searching for things.
Yeah. Yeah, I just decided not to work. I just put my feet up. My husband tells me that I get to put my feet up and watch South Park at work. And I'm like,
not exactly.
Well, not exactly. I stopped watching South Park because I don't have TV here at home, and I, in general, don't watch TV. They had like the same 30 episodes on Comedy Central that they run over and over.
Yeah.
And within the first 2 or 3 words that are said during the episode, I know what episode it is. And I'm like, I'm done. So I've just been writing. And that's another thing is I wanted to write more. And by stopping watching that stuff and doing the podcast, not only am I writing more for the podcast, I'm doing my own writing way more. Mm-hmm. And I wrote a new blog post for my blog that's, I don't know, published like 4 o'clock this morning. Hopefully I proofread it correctly. And then I wrote one that I'm scheduling for May 25th. And there's a reason behind that. But anyway, I wrote 2 posts last night. I wrote about 3,500 words. And I set a goal at the beginning of May to write a minimum of 2,000 words a week. An hour podcast is about 3,300 words. So I don't think that'll be too hard to meet. And once I do that consistently, I want to bump it up. I'm going to still do the writing for here, but I would like to get at least a story a week on my blog as well. So I'm probably going to bump it to 5,000 words a week.
I think that's awesome. I get tired after I'm done spelling my name. It's about as far as I get.
And I love doing it. It's like I talked last week in the podcast. You know, I knew that I wrote well, but I never had the confidence to do a lot of things. And it all started with Steve Frederick hiring me at the Star-Herald. Gave me the confidence I needed. He told me when I started at the paper, he goes, I can't teach you how to write. You already know how to do that, and you do it well, but I can teach you how to be a reporter. That kind of took me back, because that was the first time anybody told me I was good at writing. Mm-hmm. And, you know, this is the guy that's the editor of the paper. He'd been the editor for years. And then he just encouraged me more and more to do things, to the point that I went and asked him, said, hey, man, can I do a column? You know, you write an editorial every single day. Can I write a column a week? And then when Steve retired and Bart took over, he said to me, your writing's too good to be buried in the middle of the Sunday paper. You're going on Thursday's editorial page. And so if it wasn't for the two of them and letting me do things and try things, and if it didn't work out, it didn't work out. Yeah, I still had a story, but I learned what worked, what didn't. I learned how to make my writing better. And when I left the paper, I continued to write. I continued to keep my blog, which I'll have to go back and look at the first post. If anyone finds my blog, the very first post is on the Belmont Tunnel. And that was back in 2013. So I'm not sure if I hit my 10-year mark or not yet. I'm just not sure when I started.
You're 10 year.
Yeah, I'm 10 years old. But I kept writing there. I finished my memoir. And then I thought, you know, I think I can do a podcast. I think I'm familiar with it enough. And I didn't want to do it alone. And I thought that, you know, this weird guy, Connor, that I worked with, was cool enough to work with me and tell me, yeah, this works, this doesn't work, and that it wouldn't be hard to make decisions together.
Yeah.
And if a story...
So who's this cool guy you kept talking about?
Yeah, I don't know. Man. He didn't show up last week. Made me cry. That's what happens when real life gets in the way.
Actually, not to change the subject, but something we should have brought up first. Congratulations to our 2023 senior graduates. They will be graduating tomorrow at the Scottsbluff, or I should say the Bearcat Stadium at the middle school. Probably around noon. If anyone's listening to this by then, it'll be posted after that. So. Yeah.
So you missed it.
So you missed it. Yeah. By the time you guys hear this, you missed it. But it would have been our Sunday and I hope it's beautiful. Usually is a really awesome day, especially for the seniors that have worked so hard to get there. So congratulations to them for when they finally hear this. If any seniors do hear this.
Yeah. Kids don't read today. They just listen to podcasts. My cat Londo has come for a visit. And for anybody that may wonder why my cat's name is Londo, go watch Babylon 5.
There you go. There's bringing up an old one.
That is one of my favorite television shows of all time.
Wow, that's back a ways.
Yeah, 94, 95 it started, I believe. My favorite TV shows nobody has ever heard of.
I've heard of it.
You've heard of Babylon? You haven't seen it?
Babylon 5, Farscape, and Battlestar Galactica. Those are ones I just never quite got into. I didn't get into Stargate.
Okay, so I don't think Connor is cool anymore. No, they're all pretty good shows, but sci-fi is...
Firefly, we can agree that.
Oh, yes.
Fireflies.
Whenever I get really, really down and can't focus on anything, can't do anything, I put Firefly on and it works. And if it's not a Formula One weekend, Formula One is my go-to.
Formula One or Firefly.
Yeah. And unfortunately, this weekend that we're recording, the race was canceled. I don't know if you heard about that or not. It was supposed to be the race in Imola, and it's in this region called Emilia-Romagna in Italy. This is the second time this year that they have had flooding. The riverbanks flooded, and the track is right next to the river. The last I saw, 9 people were dead.
Wow.
Yeah. So
unless they're going to do Formula One boat racing, it's just not going to work.
So they canceled the race, which I like the race at Imola, but it's absolutely the right call. Formula One management already donated $1 million. I can't remember which team. One of the teams donated $1 million, and then Max Verstappen, who is one of the drivers, he got, I believe it's going to happen tomorrow. It might be today, but he got a whole bunch of drivers together to do some virtual racing, and they're going to raise money while they're doing the virtual racing and donate it to the region to help the folks out. But it's been really bad. And all that noise you hear, folks, if you can hear it, Londo is getting some head scratches from Connor.
He's about to fall off the table.
So yeah, whenever I get really down, I'll watch Formula One. Really, really helps me. Firefly is my next go-to. And I haven't seen Babylon 5 in a while. So I might have to go back and watch that. But I've been taking stuff to watch at work, but I've been doing so much writing, I'm not watching anything. And
you should stop saying stuff like this. People ain't thinking you're working for nothing.
Yeah.
It's like, well, I used to bring movies over to watch.
I used to take my Nintendo Switch as well.
Everyone's wondering what the heck kind of job she has.
But, you and I had talked, and one of our goals was to try and get a few episodes ahead. Get, at least 2 or 3, but we want to get quite a few more in case we have some disaster that happens. We've already got something recorded, and it's ready to go. And I don't think we need to do anything in order. There are some things that I am very adamant about doing in order, but I don't think we have to go from this is what it was like, and then Native Americans were here, and then the white men came through, and then, okay, now we got to do Hiram Scott. Then we got to do the origin of Gearing. Then we got to do the origin of Scotts Bluff. Then we got to do the first business. Then, I don't think we have to go in order like that.
Nor have we.
Yeah, no, we haven't. We sort of did a little bit in the introductory episode just to kind of give people an idea. In all honesty, Connor, when I sit down on Tuesday to start working and writing, because I've done a lot of research that I think it's going to be at least a year before I have to start spending a couple of weeks researching, because I've read so much and I've done so much already. When I sit down on Tuesday, it really comes down to what do I feel like talking about this week? And I try to, I know I'm not always successful, and sometimes you come in here going, we're talking about what? But I try to get it to you by Thursday so that you have time to read it, and so you at least know what's going on. And if
it's my own fault. I don't read it in time.
and our schedules are completely opposite. You work like what, 6 to 4, something like that.
About depending on the day.
Yeah, and you work Monday through Friday. Mm-hmm. I work 10 p.m. to 8 a.m. Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So it's been a little difficult to match our days up to get things going. I know we were trying Thursdays for a while, which didn't quite work out.
Yeah.
And now we're trying Saturday. So you also have to know that when you come over on Saturdays, I'm going to be crying a lot because Saturday is qualifying for Formula One. And I'm giving that up for you, man. But I think as well you might get to my house right at the end of qualifying. We haven't gotten to the European leg yet, and all the qualifying so far, like Australia, was at 1 or 2 in the morning, and then this week for Imola would have been, I believe qualifying was 7, so qualifying would have been 7 to 8. I get off work at 8, and then I would come home, and you would show up like 10 minutes later. So I think we'll be okay for that case. So,
as you can tell, folks, she's really into racing.
Just Formula One.
I don't know anything about racing.
And I could talk all day about it. So
I know the cars go fast. They go around the track. They go fast. They go around the track again. That's all I know.
Yeah. Somebody had asked Max Verstappen a couple of years ago what he did for a living, and he said he drives cars really fast in a circle. Okay. A Formula One track technically is a circle, but, there's left and right turns and stuff.
It's much more interesting than NASCAR as far as racing goes. I'm still waiting for the whole, pod racer, Star Wars kind of thing for me to get interested there.
See, now that would be awesome in Formula One if you had, like, little rockets you could shoot out at. That would be awesome. But those cars are like $15 million, so they're not blowing them up anytime soon.
No, you could see the devastation on a lot of those. I don't know what you call them, coaches. What do you call them? The people who talk to the racers and kind of guide them.
Oh, they're in Formula One. They're team principals.
Team principals. Okay, you can kind of see the horror on their faces when the cars blow
and
up
the cameras are always right there.
Yeah, you see the look of devastation on their faces, like, oh wow, I don't know how much that just cost.
Yeah. And there's actually on the Formula One subreddit, I'm not sure where it originates from because I haven't looked closely, but they have a World Destructors Championship, and every time somebody wrecks something, they have, the front wing costs this much, this costs this much, and then whoever has the highest total at the end, I mean, you don't actually get anything for it, but it's like
the biggest loser contest.
Yeah,
kind of thing.
Yeah. So, this is what people in western Nebraska do that I hang out with. When I sit and talk with my friend Sandra, we just sit around and BS. Always ends up something to do with history.
Yeah. We're inside, but usually there's a front porch and some iced tea.
Yeah. And it's a nice sunny day today. Unfortunately, in about an hour and a half to 2 hours, I have to go to bed so I can go to work tonight. And I decided tonight, rather than Tuesday, I'm going to try and decide what we're going to do next week for next week's episode. I have a couple of ideas.
We were going to talk about the North Platte too, because it's been
the river.
It's been raining here incredibly, and we've actually had a few times we've gotten some flash flood warnings, which is kind of a big deal here because we don't get them a lot. It's a really, really dry area, so flash flood. And flash floods here aren't like flash floods in Arizona or in like New Mexico or even in Texas, the drier parts of the world. When we get lots of rain, it pretty much soaks up into the ground. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't really stay on the surface and causes big problems. And if it does, it flows into the North Platte. So that's when we get real nasty floods, if we get them at all. And we really we really don't, because the North Platte's just so low.
And even after all these years of living here, the amount of rain that we've gotten in the last couple of weeks, when it starts raining, you know, I can hear it on the roof, and I'll go look outside because I've now been trained, like all Nebraskans, is that rain or is it hail? Yep. And then I look outside and I'm like, oh, it's just raining, because it's just a regular rainstorm from where I come from in New York. For here, it's like, oh my God.
It is. It's a big deal. We don't get a lot of rain here.
Yeah, but where I grew up, it's just Tuesday.
Yep.
You know, it's not a big deal at all.
Yep.
So we just decided to sit down and chat today. It's been an hour, Connor.
It has.
Yes.
It's been a nice chat. I suppose, though, we probably need to get going with our day.
Yeah, and you can get on with the things you need to get done before you go back to work on Monday. And tonight is my Friday, so I'm looking forward to that.
I'm looking forward to the end of next week. It's almost done.
Yeah.
The school year's almost done, so there we go.
My husband's looking forward to that as well. When I used to work in, like I told you a couple of weeks ago, end of April, everybody is starting to count how many days.
Yep.
And they'll be like, yep, on the 7th we have this holiday, and on the 12th this happens, and this is the last day. Everybody knows. They know exactly what's going on, because everyone is counting to the end of the year. And you're just trying really hard not to drop kick somebody down the hallway.
Oh, yeah. Definitely.
And I imagine that's the same no matter where you're at in education. You just can't wait for the end of the year to come. Where I work, it's quiet all night, so not much is going to change for me.
You're going to have to deal with the summer, too, though. The summer is going to have its consequences.
Yes, it will. But I am hoping, I had promised the folks at the zoo that I'm going to try and get over there once a week. So when the summer starts, I'm going to have to drag you over.
I need to get there, actually. I haven't been there for years. We didn't mention it in this podcast, but the zoography program.
Oh, the zoology
program. It's a program that's specifically geared for youth.
No, it's not Zoofari. What do they call that program?
I don't know.
But go ahead, you can explain that.
I did it when I was very young, and it's worth it. And if anybody here in the community is interested in it, please get a hold of the zoo. It's for kids. I want to say they started around 12 or 13.
Yeah, I think
it's up until the end of your high school year.
Yeah, I think junior high and high school.
Yep, they really encourage you to do it every summer, and it is a remarkable program. You get to be with the animals. You get to talk to the wonderful people at the zoo. They're so knowledgeable, and if you want a future with animals, it's probably the best place to go, honestly, around here.
And one of the, not old keepers, because he's like your age, so he's way younger than me, but that's how he started out here. And then he went to college. He's a herpetologist, so reptiles and stuff. Mm-hmm. And then he came and worked 2 years, I think, here at the zoo. And he went to a place in Tennessee that's all they do is reptiles. So, so if it all started here.
Yeah, if there's any viewers who have children who are interested in animals, interested in the zoo and the aspect of keeping care of exotic pets, then that's the way to go.
Yeah. And I could literally talk about the zoo all day. It's one of my favorite places in the world. But I kind of sat down at the beginning of May and I said, I'm doing one podcast a week, no matter what. I want to get out and do more this summer.
Got to get out and do more this summer.
And kind of have that be such a habit that when winter comes that I just keep doing it. So we'll be doing more stories. We're going to look into doing interviews with folks. And I know a bunch of people that will say yes. I know one person that already has said yes.
Get him over.
And I could literally just hit record and take a nap, and she'll talk for 5 hours about the Japanese, and we'll be good to go. And so that's going to do it for us this time on Storytelling on the Plains. We just kind of chit-chatted, told some stories, talked about where we're going to go with this, and next week we'll be back with a super interesting story.
Yep. We'll see you next time, folks. Thanks for listening to Storytelling on the Plains, a podcast about the history of Western Nebraska. If you enjoyed this episode, visit our website, storytellingontheplains.com, where you can subscribe to the show through a variety of podcast hosts so you never miss an episode. If you'd like to help support the podcast, please share it with others, post about it on social media, leave us a rating on Apple Podcasts, or head on over to the Patreon for bonus content. Also, if you have an idea for a story, feel free to send us an email at feedback@storytellingontheplains.com. Until next time, thanks for listening to Storytelling on the Plains.